Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My name is Erica Brooks. I am 34 years old, a high school English teacher from Chicago, and 3 weeks ago, I woke up in a hospital bed unable to move or speak. I could not open my eyes, I could not lift a finger, but I could hear everything. Every whisper, every lie, every betrayal. And what I heard my husband and his assistant planning, while they stood over what they thought was my dying body, changed everything. Before that night, I would have told you my life was steady and good. I loved my job at a public high school on the South Side. I loved my students, my colleagues, the rhythm of the school year. And I loved my husband, Brian Walker. We had been married for 8 years. We were both Black, both first-generation college graduates, both proud of the lives we were building. Or at least I thought we were building them together. Brian and I met in college in Ohio. I was an education major. He was in business, already talking about owning his own company by 30. He was charming and ambitious, the kind of man who walked into a room and already saw it as a deal to be negotiated. I fell hard. We married 2 years after graduation and moved to Chicago so he could work in commercial real estate. By our 5th anniversary, Brian had started his own development firm. He worked long hours, but it paid off. We bought a renovated brick house in Bronzeville, with a little yard where I planted flowers in the spring and a dining room big enough for Thanksgiving. We took vacations to Honolulu and New Orleans. We talked about having children once things settled down. I thought we were a team. I taught American literature at a magnet high school near downtown. I loved walking in each morning, coffee in hand, talking to my juniors about Toni Morrison and August Wilson. I would come home and vent about grading essays. Brian would tell me about zoning meetings and investors. We had Friday date nights, inside jokes, playlists for road trips. I believed I knew who he was. About a year before the accident, Brian hired a new assistant, Jasmine Price. She was 26, beautiful, sharp, always in sleek suits and perfect makeup. According to Brian, she was a lifesaver. Jasmine handled his calendar, his files, his clients. Her name started showing up in every story he told. Jasmine caught a mistake in a contract. Jasmine rescued a deal that was falling apart. Jasmine stayed late to help finish a proposal. At first, I tried to ignore the way he said her name. I trusted my husband. We had been together almost a decade. When Jasmine started appearing at company dinners where spouses were invited, I told myself it made sense for his right hand to be there. When she stayed after Brian's birthday party at our house to help clean up, I told myself she was just polite. When I dropped off lunch at his office and found her sitting close to him, laughing at every joke, I swallowed the tightness in my chest and smiled. My sister, Jennifer, was not so convinced. She pulled me aside one Sunday after dinner at my parents' place. "Do you trust Brian around that assistant?" she asked, blunt as always. I laughed it off. I told her Brian loved me, that he would never cheat, that we were solid. I heard myself say those words and wished I believed them as completely as I used to. About 6 months before the accident, things began to shift. Brian became distant in ways that did not make sense. He was always on his phone, screen turned away from me, stepping into another room to take calls. Our Friday date nights started getting canceled because of client emergencies. He changed his wardrobe, started going to the gym more, scrolling through his phone with a small, private smile on his face. When I asked if something was wrong, he said he was stressed about a big project and that once it closed, everything would go back to normal. I wanted so badly to believe him that I shoved my doubts down deep. I told myself I was being insecure, that I was reading too much into things. I ignored the way my stomach dropped when he said he had to fly to Detroit for a weekend conference he had never mentioned before. I ignored the new cologne on his neck when he crawled into bed at 2 in the morning. I wanted my marriage to be real more than I wanted to see the truth. Then came the night of the accident. It was October 15th. I had stayed late at school for parent-teacher conferences. By the time I left, it was dark and raining, a cold Midwestern drizzle that made the streets shine. I merged onto Interstate 94, heading south toward home, the route I had driven hundreds of times. I kept my speed reasonable, hands at 10 and 2, my mind on the conversations I had just had with anxious parents. A few miles out, traffic began to slow. I moved my foot to the brake pedal and pressed. Nothing happened. Confused, I pressed harder. Still nothing. The car did not slow at all. Panic slammed into me. I pumped the brakes, heart racing, but the pedals sank uselessly to the floor. Ahead of me, red taillights glowed through the rain. A semi-truck loomed larger and larger. I yanked the steering wheel to the right, trying to get to the shoulder, but the wet pavement betrayed me. The car skidded, spun, the world outside my windshield turning into a blur of lights and concrete and rain. I remember screaming, the weightless lurch of losing control, and then the crushing impact as my car slammed sideways into the concrete barrier. Metal screamed. Airbags exploded. Then everything went black. When awareness seeped back in, it did not feel like waking up. It felt like floating to the surface of a dark lake and finding that you cannot break through the ice. I could not open my eyes. I could not move. I felt something thick in my throat and heard machines beeping around me. Voices murmured, footsteps moved, hands touched my body, but I could not respond. I was trapped inside myself. Terror does not cover what that felt like. Imagine wanting to scream and not being able to make a sound, wanting to move and not being able to twitch. I lay there, locked in, while doctors and nurses discussed me as if I were a chart on the wall. They said minimal brain activity. They said probable vegetative state. They said if she wakes up, she may have severe cognitive impairment. I heard every word. I learned later that I had multiple broken ribs, a collapsed lung, a fractured pelvis, severe head trauma, and internal bleeding. I had been in a coma for 3 days. When my brain woke up, my body did not follow. The condition has a name, locked-in syndrome. My mind was intact, fully present, but my body was almost completely paralyzed. I could not speak. I could barely move my eyes. No one knew I was in there. At first, Brian played the grieving husband flawlessly. Nurses told me that the first few days he barely left my bedside. When I finally became aware, I heard his voice beside me, low and choked with emotion. He told me he loved me, that he could not lose me, that I had to fight my way back to him. He held my hand. He cried. If I had not already known there was something wrong between us, I might have believed him. It was on the 4th day after I became aware that I heard Jasmine's voice in my room for the first time. "How is she?" she asked, standing somewhere near my bed, her tone gentle and performatively worried. "No change," Brian said. His voice was tight, but not with grief. With impatience. "Dr. Williams says it is unlikely she will ever come back from this. If she does, they say she will not really be herself." There was a rustle as someone sat down, the mattress near my hip dipping. "I am so sorry," Jasmine murmured. "This must be so hard for you." Brian sighed. He was closer now. I could feel his warmth by my arm. "I know this sounds horrible," he said quietly, "but part of me wonders if it would be better if she just did not wake up. If my heart had not already been monitored, they would have thought it stopped." I tried to move, to scream, to do anything. Nothing happened. Tears leaked from the corners of my eyes, but that was the only sign my body could manage. "Do not say that," Jasmine whispered, but there was something thin and false in her voice. "Look at her," Brian said. "Even if she does wake up, they said she will need round-the-clock care. She would not be Erica anymore. Keeping her alive would be cruel." Jasmine hesitated. "When do you think they will let you make decisions about life support?" "Doctor said if there is no improvement in 2 weeks, they will talk to me about options," Brian replied. "They will probably suggest a long-term care facility, but I have medical power of attorney. I can decide to let her go peacefully." My husband and his assistant were standing over my bed discussing whether to let me go. As they talked, they shifted, moved closer, and then I heard the soft, unmistakable sound of a kiss. They were kissing beside my hospital bed, beside a body they believed to be an empty shell. Over the next days, their visits continued. When nurses or doctors were present, they played their roles perfectly. Brian, the devoted husband, Jasmine, the loyal employee supporting him. When they thought they were alone with what they believed was a mindless body, the mask slipped. I learned that they had been sleeping together for 8 months. It started at a real estate conference in Detroit. After that, there were weekend conferences, late nights at the office that were actually nights at Jasmine's apartment, lunches and stolen hours in hotels. I also learned that my accident was far from the disaster it should have been for Brian. It was, in his words, almost convenient. One evening, they came in later than usual. I listened as Jasmine asked, "How did it go with the lawyer?" Brian sounded like he was walking her through a spreadsheet. "Good. Really good. The life insurance policy on Erica is $2 million. It pays out for accidental death, which this was. The house is worth about $1.2 million in the current market. It is paid off. Her retirement account has about $300,000. Her life insurance through the school district is another $500,000. Altogether, we are looking at around $4 million once everything is settled. Jasmine repeated softly. We will be set for life. They talked about selling our Bronzeville house and buying a luxury condo downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows. They talked about taking a long trip to Miami and Key West to get away from everything after the funeral. Jasmine asked if she could keep my jewelry. Brian told her he had already brought her my diamond pendant from our 5th anniversary. My symbol of eternal love was hanging around his mistress's neck while I lay there paralyzed. Rage ate at me, but a darker thought kept surfacing no matter how hard I tried to push it down. The brakes. My brakes had failed completely on a fairly new car that had just been serviced. Then one night, Jasmine asked the question that confirmed the nightmare. Tell me the truth, she said. Did you really do it? Did you really cut her brake lines like you said you might? Silence. I could hear only the machines and my own breathing through the ventilator. Finally, Brian answered, low and flat. Yes. 2 days before the accident, I went out to her car in the middle of the night and cut the brake lines most of the way through. I weakened them enough so they would fail under pressure, but not so much that she would notice right away. I knew she would be driving home from that conference night on the highway. It was supposed to look like an accident in the rain. Jasmine sounded almost impressed. How did you even know how to do that? There are tutorials for everything online, Brian said with a short laugh. I practiced on a junk car at a salvage yard first. It took 20 minutes. 20 minutes to plan my death. 20 minutes to turn 8 years of marriage into a murder plot. I lay there, listening to the man I had loved admit that he had tried to kill me for money and a younger woman. I could not move. I could not scream. Tears slid down the sides of my face into my hair. The next morning, a nurse named Lauren King came in for her usual shift. Lauren was in her early 30s, a black woman with kind eyes and a calm voice. She had been caring for me since I was moved out of intensive care. Unlike some staff who spoke around me like I was furniture, Lauren always spoke to me, explaining what she was doing even though she thought I could not understand. That morning, as she suctioned the ventilator tube in my throat, she paused. Erica, she said softly, are you crying? I felt tissues dabbing the wetness from my face. Where are these tears coming from? She murmured, more to herself than to me. She finished her tasks but kept glancing at my face, thoughtful. Later that afternoon, she came back with a chair and sat close to my bed. Erica, she said quietly, this may sound strange, but I am going to ask you something. If you can hear me and understand me, try to blink once. I had not tried to control anything since I woke up. Fear and exhaustion had swallowed me whole. But her words gave me a target. I shoved every bit of will I had into my right eyelid. Blink. Blink. Move. The lid fluttered, just a tiny tremor, but it moved. Lauren gasped. Do it again, she whispered. I did, another shaky flutter. Her eyes filled with tears. Oh my God. You are in there. You can hear me. She leaned closer. All right, Erica. Blink once for yes, twice for no. Are you scared? I blinked once. Are you in physical pain? 2 blinks. Is there something wrong? 1 blink. She sat back, thinking fast. I am going to bring a letter board, she said. If you can move your eyes a little, we can spell things out. I will be right back. She returned with a sheet of paper divided into sections of letters. Holding it where I could see, she pointed to groups and then to individual letters, watching my eye movements and blinks. It was agonizingly slow. It took nearly an hour to spell our first clear word together, DNGR. Lauren went pale. You are in danger? She asked. From who? With more slow, brutal effort, I spelled, HUSBND. Her jaw tightened. Brian. 1 blink. Yes. Over the next hours, with Lauren coming and going between other patients, I spelled out the essential details. Affair. Insurance. Money. Funeral. And finally, HECUTMYBRAKS. By the time we finished, Lauren was shaking. He tried to kill you, she whispered. He really tried to kill you for the insurance. 1 blink. Yes. When do they usually visit? She asked. I spelled, TUNIGHT. She checked the clock. All right, she said, her voice firm now. We are going to get proof. I am going to hide my phone in here and record them. If he talks about any of this again, we will have more than your word. We will have his own voice. She tucked her phone behind the water pitcher near my bed, microphone facing out, and started the recording. I will be right outside, she whispered. If anything happens, a monitor will alert me. Then she left me alone to wait. Around 7 in the evening, I heard the door open. Brian's voice came first, warm and public. Hey, baby. How are you today? Papers rustled. Doctor says no change, he told Jasmine, his tone flattening. It has been almost 2 weeks. When can you talk to them about, Jasmine asked. Tomorrow, Brian said. Dr. Williams is going to give me his full assessment. If he says there is no real brain activity, I can finally make the decision to withdraw life support. Then we just wait a few hours. They talked about the life insurance, again about trips and condos, about how free they would be. Then Jasmine's voice dropped. Do you ever feel guilty? She asked. About what you did? My heartbeat thudded loud in my ears. The monitor beside me sped up. I prayed he would answer honestly one more time. Guilty, Brian said. Not really. Our marriage was over. She was holding me back. The brake lines were already worn. I just helped them along. It is not like I shot her. It was not as explicit as his first confession, but it was more than enough for anyone with ears. They stayed a little longer, then finally left. Moments later, Lauren hurried in, grabbed her phone, and slipped on headphones. I watched her face as she listened. Shock, disgust, anger chased across her features. When she finished, she squeezed my hand. We have him, she said. We are going to the doctor, and then to the police. She found my neurologist, Dr. Howard Williams, a black man in his 50s with tired, kind eyes. She told him what she had observed about my blinking and eye movements, even before she mentioned the recording. He conducted his own tests, asking me to blink on command, to move my eyes up and down and side to side. When I passed each task, he nodded slowly. Classic locked-in presentation, he said quietly. Full consciousness, no motor function. Then Lauren played him the recording. By the time it ended, Dr. Williams' face was set in grim lines. We need to call the police, he said. And we need to notify family members other than her husband. Who should we call? With Lauren's help and the board, I spelled my sister's name and number. Dr. Williams phoned Jennifer and told her to come to the hospital immediately, alone, without informing Brian. Then he called the police, calmly stating that he believed he had a patient who was the victim of an attempted murder and that he had a recording of the suspect confessing. Jennifer arrived in under an hour, breathless and wide-eyed. When she realized I could follow her with my eyes and blink on cue, she burst into tears. You have been in there this whole time? She asked. One blink. Yes. Dr. Williams and Lauren told her everything, including what Brian and Jasmine had said about cutting my brakes, the insurance money, and withdrawing life support. Jennifer's expression hardened into something I had never seen on her face before. Pure fury. 2 detectives from the Chicago Police Department arrived soon after. Detective Carla Robinson and Detective David Harris, both black, both stone-faced professionals. They listened to the recording twice, then asked Dr. Williams about my condition and Lauren about how she had discovered I was conscious. This is strong, Detective Robinson said, but we still need physical evidence from the car. Our forensics team will examine the brake lines. If they find what we think they will, we have motive, opportunity, and confession. They decided not to arrest Brian immediately. Instead, they planned a sting. The next day, Dr. Williams would call Brian for a meeting to discuss prognosis and options. Brian would walk into the room expecting to sign papers to end my life. Instead, he would walk into a room with 2 undercover detectives and hidden recorders. That night, Jennifer stayed with me, sleeping in a chair by my bed. Lauren checked on me constantly. I did not sleep. I lay there, forcing myself to stay calm, to stay silent when I wanted to thrash and shout. If I could endure one more day of pretending to be unreachable, Brian might never hurt anyone again. The following afternoon, Brian walked into my room at the scheduled time. Dr. Williams greeted him and gestured to the chair next to my bed. Detectives Robinson and Harris stood quiet in the corner, posing as hospital administrators. Thank you for coming, Mr. Walker, Dr. Williams said. We need to talk about Erica's condition. He told Brian that my scans showed minimal brain activity, that my responsiveness was essentially non-existent, that in his professional opinion, I would never truly recover. Every statement was a lie, but Brian swallowed them without question. You have medical power of attorney, Dr. Williams said. You can choose to continue life support or withdraw it. If we remove the ventilator, Erica will pass within a few hours. It will be peaceful. Brian stared at my unmoving body. I stared back from inside, tracking him with my eyes while keeping the rest of my face slack. We talked about this once, he said slowly. Years ago, Erica said she would not want to be kept alive by machines. I think she would want me to let her go. The lie tasted sour, even from where I lay. This is a permanent decision, Dr. Williams said. Are you certain? Brian took a breath. Yes. It is time. Then, almost casually, he added, how long does the life insurance take to process after everything? That depends on the company, Dr. Williams replied, voice neutral. By the way, I should let you know that the police are examining your wife's vehicle as part of a routine safety investigation. They are looking at the brake system, in particular. Brian's head snapped up. The brakes? Yes, the doctor said. In a car as relatively new as Erica's, total brake failure is unusual. They want to make sure there was not a defect that could affect other drivers. Color drained from Brian's face. I am sure it was just wear and tear, he said quickly. Detective Robinson stepped forward. Actually, Mr. Walker, our forensics team examined the car yesterday, she said, flashing her badge. I am Detective Robinson with the Chicago Police Department. This is Detective Harris. The brake lines were not simply worn. They were deliberately cut, partially severed so they would fail under pressure. Brian lurched to his feet. I want a lawyer, he said. I am not answering any questions. You will have that opportunity, Detective Harris said calmly. But first, I would like to know how your assistant Jasmine fits into all of this. We have witnesses who have seen you together here and elsewhere. We know about the relationship. We know about the life insurance. We know about the condo you two have been looking at. That is ridiculous, Brian snapped. Jasmine is just helping me. I love my wife. I have been here every day praying she wakes up. Your wife already told us otherwise, Detective Robinson said quietly. Brian froze. She cannot talk, he whispered. You said she is brain dead. He looked at Dr. Williams, panic rising. I said that in front of you, Dr. Williams answered evenly. In truth, Erica has locked-in syndrome. She has been fully conscious this entire time. She can hear everything. She can understand everything. She has been communicating with us for the last day. She told us about the affair. She told us about the life insurance. She told us you cut her brakes. Brian turned toward me slowly. I met his eyes and, with deliberate effort, blinked once. Yes, I heard you. I know. Detective Harris pulled a small recorder from his pocket and pressed play. Brian's own voice filled the room, describing how he had gone out in the middle of the night, how he had sliced my brake lines most of the way through, how he had practiced on a junk car beforehand. When the recording ended, the room was silent except for Brian's ragged breathing and the beeping of my heart monitor. Where did you get that? He asked, voice cracking. From your wife, Detective Robinson said. She and Nurse King recorded you. You might want to be more careful about who you declare brain dead next time. Detective Harris stepped behind Brian and pulled his hands together. Brian Walker, he said, you are under arrest for the attempted murder of Erica Brooks, conspiracy to commit murder, and insurance fraud. You have the right to remain silent. Brian barely seemed to hear the rights being read. He stared at me, eyes wide with horror and disbelief. Erica, he choked out as the handcuffs clicked. I did not want you to suffer. It was supposed to be quick. I loved you once. I needed a way out. The business. I watched him, my face still, my eyes steady. Whatever sympathy I might once have felt for him was gone. All that was left was a cold, hard satisfaction. He had failed. They led him out of the room in restraints. Jennifer rushed in seconds later, crushed my hand between both of hers, and sobbed with relief. Lauren stood at the foot of my bed, eyes shining. Dr. Williams exhaled slowly, shoulders dropping for the first time since he had entered my care. For the first time since the accident, I felt something like safety. The days that followed were a blur of interviews and evaluations. Jasmine was arrested as an accomplice after investigators pulled messages off her phone and security footage from the salvage yard where Brian had practiced. Forensic analysis of my car confirmed deliberate tampering. The recordings were logged as evidence. Brian's attorney tried to argue that he had been venting under stress, that his words were fantasy. The cut brake lines told a different story. My parents flew back from an Alaskan cruise as soon as they heard. The combination of relief that I was conscious, grief over my injuries, and devastation over Brian's betrayal nearly broke them, but they stayed by my side. We will get you the best care, my father said, voice rough as he squeezed my hand. We are going to fight for every inch you can get back. I was moved to a rehabilitation center that specialized in neurological injuries. Physical therapists, occupational therapists, and speech therapists worked with me every day. At first, progress was microscopic. A twitch in my finger, a slight movement in my toes, a stronger blink. Every small motion cost me more energy than running ever had, but anger and stubbornness kept me going. I refused to let Brian's attempt define where my story stopped. 6 months after the crash, I could move my right hand enough to use a specialized keyboard and a tracking device. My voice was returning, thin and raspy at first, then stronger. I practiced speaking for hours, shaping words slowly until they came out clearly enough for my therapist to understand. It was exhausting. It was glorious. The trial took place 8 months after the accident. Brian pleaded not guilty, which felt like a sick joke. Because of my physical limitations, I testified via live video from the rehabilitation center. With Jennifer and Lauren beside me off camera for support, I told the jury what it felt like to wake up trapped inside my own body, to hear my husband discuss letting me die, to listen to him admit that he had cut my brakes. The courtroom was silent on the screen as I spoke. When the prosecutor played the recordings and the forensic experts testified about the brake lines, I watched some of the jurors wipe their eyes. Jasmine testified for the state in exchange for a reduced sentence, admitting the affair and confirming Brian's obsession with the insurance payout. Brian sat there in his suit, eyes on the table, refusing to look at the monitor where my face appeared. The jury deliberated less than 3 hours. They returned guilty verdicts on every count: attempted first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and insurance fraud. At sentencing, the judge called Brian's actions cold, calculated, and appallingly selfish, before handing down a life sentence with no possibility of parole for 25 years. Jasmine received 10 years for her role as an accomplice. I insisted on being transported to court for the sentencing. I rolled into the courtroom in my wheelchair, cane across my lap, my family around me. When the judge read the sentence, Brian finally looked up. Our eyes met across the room. With deliberate care, I raised my right hand, extended my middle finger, and held it there until the bailiffs led him away. That was the last time I saw him in person. That was 2 years ago. Now I am sitting in my own small house on the west side of Chicago, typing this with both hands. I walk with a cane. My speech is slower and a little slurred on tired days, but my voice is mine again. I went back to teaching last fall, part-time at first, then full-time. My students threw a welcome back party, complete with a banner that said, "Ms. Brooks is stronger than ever." I almost cried in front of the whole class. I divorced Brian as soon as I was legally and physically able. Because of the criminal conviction and the paper trail of his insurance scheme, the court awarded me essentially everything. The house, his share of our assets, what remained of his retirement accounts. I sold the Bronzeville house that had become haunted with memories and bought a smaller place closer to my school. I filled it with new furniture and new photos. Nothing from our old life came with me. Lauren and I are inseparable now. She is family. We have a standing weekly night, bad reality television, good wine, loud laughter. She is engaged to her longtime partner, and I am going to be in the wedding. I am dating her brother, Michael, a history teacher who knows exactly what happened and treats my scars and my cane as ordinary parts of me, not tragedies. For the first time in a long time, love feels safe. Every year on October 15th, I mark the anniversary. I do not mourn. I celebrate being alive. The first year, once my doctors cleared it, I went skydiving over the Arizona desert, the rush of air in my face a fierce, joyful middle finger to the idea that fear should rule my life. The second year, I took a road trip to the Gulf Coast and stood with my feet in warm water, letting the waves wash away what was left of that night on Interstate 94. Brian's business collapsed after his arrest. His name is a cautionary headline in the local papers, a whispered story about the developer who tried to kill his teacher wife for insurance money and failed. His mother stopped speaking to him. Jasmine's parents lost their savings paying for her defense. Everyone who hitched themselves to his ambition paid a price. My family, on the other hand, is still here. My parents, older and more fragile than before, come over for Sunday dinner every week. Jennifer's kids draw me pictures of caped superheroes with canes and call them Aunt Erica. Lauren's parents insist on feeding me every time I step into their house. My life is smaller now in some ways and wider in others. Sometimes, when the house is quiet and the memories creep in, I think about Brian in his cell. I picture him lying awake on a thin mattress, replaying his choices, wondering at what point he could have turned back. He could have asked for a divorce. He could have sold the house, split the assets, walked away. Instead, he spent 20 minutes in the dark under my car and handed the rest of his life to a prison. I do not forgive him. I do not spend much time hating him either. Hate is heavy, and I carried enough weight in that hospital bed. What I feel now is cleaner, simpler. I am alive. He is locked away. I won. My name is Erica Brooks. I was supposed to die on a rainy highway and vanish into a lie about a tragic accident. Instead, I clawed my way back through metal and morphine and paralysis. I listened. I remembered. I spoke. I testified. I built something new from the wreckage. Brian Walker tried to erase me. Every breath I take is proof that he failed. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.